Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. And although today, in many ways, is hard saying goodbye to somebody, we read these amazing words in the book of Ecclesiastes. The author writes, and he says, "Everything has a moment. Every purpose under the sun has a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting, a time for demolishing and a time for building, a time for crying and a time for having fun, a time for weeping and a time for dancing." And this morning's service really has two purposes. Today we want to firstly come and celebrate the life of Graeme. And just looking at the photo on the front here, anybody who drinks deluxe coffee is having an amazing life, because that's one of the best coffee roasters in the whole of Cape Town. And we want to celebrate, capture his life with stories of him and who he is. And then secondly, as friends, family, maybe colleagues, individually and then together, to come and say goodbye to him. We'll chat briefly later how grief is a bit of a roller coaster, and there are so many different phases people go through when somebody passes away. And so by the end of this morning, the real hope and prayer is that today we have put a small, almost like a marker in the sand, to say, this is the day we came to say goodbye to Graeme. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask, we're going to have a poem read to us from Ingrid, if that's okay. We'd love to read it, and this is just a poem as we open up the service together.
I need to sit. So.
It's all set up for you just over there.
Welcome to everybody. Must I come a bit closer?
It's okay.
It's okay, good. So I've just chosen this poem from John O'Donoghue on the death of the beloved, to read for Graeme and Allian and Stephen and the family. Though we need to weep your loss, you dwell in that safe place in our hearts, where no storm or night or pain can reach you. Your love was like the dawn, brightening our lives, awakening beneath the dark a further adventure of colour. The sound of your voice found for us a new music that brightened everything. Whatever you enfold in your gaze, quickened in the joy of its being. You placed smiles like flowers on the altar of the heart. Your mind always sparkled with wonder at things. Though your days here were brief, your spirit was always alive, awake, complete. We look towards each other no longer from the old distance of our names. Now you dwell inside the rhythm of breath, as close to us as we are to ourselves. Though we cannot see you with our outward eyes, we know your soul gazes into your face, smiling back at us from within everything to which we bring our best refinement. Let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find you in presence, beside us, when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When orchids brighten the earth, darkest winter has turned to spring. May this dark grief flower with hope in every heart that loves you. May you continue to inspire us, to enter each day with a generous heart, to serve the call of courage and love until we see your beautiful face again, in that land where there is no separation, where all tears will be wiped from our mind, and where we will never lose you again. From my side, I just want to say I really remembered Graeme for his generous heart and his courage throughout life. And whenever he told a story, he had, I think you're all familiar with that sort of hoarse little chuckle that he used to have. And that rings in my ear. It will ring when I think of Graeme. And then just to Ali and Stevie, thank you for allowing me to walk this very difficult path. The part of it the last weeks was you. It really has been an honor for me to go through those vulnerable times. And I'm just amazed, both you and Stevie, how you pulled together, how strong you were, woke up in the beautiful Camps Bay, drove through to Tygerberg every day, and I was there myself. Not an easy hospital to have your dad in that condition, but you actually stuck together, and that is there for the future. And yes, and I know Henna and Graeme are incredibly proud of you. So hats off to you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I really want to echo those words. And I know that on behalf of family, and especially the close family, how much they appreciate the love and support that friends and family give. And whether it's here in South Africa or in the UK, let's remember them, support them, and encourage them in the days, weeks, and months as they continue to process all that has happened. At this time, we are going to come and capture and celebrate the life of Graeme. Having chatted to Alister briefly, my uncle was the Admiral of the SA Navy for many years, and I'd spent quite a bit of time when I was growing up in the 70s, 80s and 90s on the Navy base in Simonstown, and maybe we walked past each other and saw each other, who knows. And so it's incredible, the connections and how so many people have so many cross connections in life today. So we're going to celebrate the life of Graeme. Who's keen to start? Anyone keen to start? Are you going to come, sir? Fantastic. Come talk over here so everybody can hear you, and let's celebrate his life together.
Thanks, Clive. Good morning. I'm Jacques. I'm a good friend of first Henna, and then I got to know Graeme through as their relationship formed. I got to know Graeme, so I'm going to capture that part of their lives and Graeme's life and how I got to know Graeme. Thank you, Clive, for those lovely words you read. It just makes one aware of the fact that you do get older. You don't stay that young 30-year-old that I was at that time, and we were at that time. So I got to know Henna, and I'm just going to kick off from there. I got to know Henna at Varsity at a party, and then later on met up with her again in Claremont, where she lived in a 2-bedroom house. And I became a boarder at Henna's house. I think she wasn't so sure in the beginning, but we actually bonded well. And then I got to know Graeme as Henna met Graeme. They worked together in Simonstown. She was a translator and Graeme was a a naval architect working for the government. And then as we got to know one another, we did fun things. In those days, if you wanted to see a movie, you actually rented a tape at the local video shop, and you had to rent this VHS machine as well for the night. And at the same time, next door to that was a Chinese shop, takeaway shop, so we would often end up having chow mein and seeing a good movie. And we saw lovely good movies together. Then Graeme he knew a guy in Simonstown with a yacht, and Graeme, being a yachtsman himself, he often went for sailing on Saturday mornings or during the day. So he invited me on one of these trips. And by then, look, Henna was a real organizer. She didn't let anything slip, and if she needed to organize something, she did it well. So Henna started packing this picnic lunch for me to take along, and she went to town, and I knew this. So I met Bo, and we had a lovely sail on the bay at False Bay, and when it got to lunchtime, I unpacked this picnic basket, and I did it with finesse, and stacked out the different starters and so on and so on. And Bo was quite an oldish chap, but quite a sense of humor. He said, "You know what, Graeme? I've always told you that you must organize yourself like Jacques." He says, "You must get yourself a girlfriend that can pamper you and look after you and really make sure that you love life." And then Graeme just looked at me, and I think, like Ingrid described it so well with that little chuckle of his, he just looked at me and nodded, and the two of us kept that secret until they got married. And then when I told the same story, Bo was there, and his reaction was, "Oh, I didn't know." But the relationship was flourishing, and Graeme, being the reserved person he was, you had to really get to know him over time. Ingrid and I, at the same time, started dating, and we got to know one another, and we actually got to know them as a couple. And we did lots of things together. I remember at one time, Henna needed built-in cupboards in her house, and she just couldn't afford it, and it was a new thing in those days. So I said to her once over a party, I said, "Henna, I'll build it for you," and she sort of just smiled at me. And then I got started, and I built the cupboards. And then she admitted that she always knew I could shoot from the hip, and often got myself into a corner. And she betted me privately that I would never do the cupboards, and then she lost the bet. So she says, "Please forgive me, I lost that bet, and I will take you to the Mount Nelson." So Henna and Graeme, myself and Ingrid went to the Mount Nelson with orchids the works, if you remember those days. We had a really fun evening. Anyway, Henna and Graeme then moved to Scotland. Alister was born in Cape Town, and they soon after that moved. And I think before that, I just want to say that one thing that I did realize from the start was, I think the handicap that they both suffered with actually really cemented that relationship. Henna being a polio sufferer, but Graeme also having asthma and severe eczema. I think that was something which there was just a bond that you couldn't understand often as an outsider, and that made them able to do all the difficult things they had to do in life. Move back to Scotland, Henna with a severe handicap. We saw them when Alister was still a baby. She would pull Alister along on the floor, and that's how she functioned. So I really took my hat off to her, but I knew that this is also because Graeme supported her in whatever she did. About a year after we got married, Ingrid and I went over to Europe, and we actually stayed with them for quite a period. We did a nice trip on the eastern side of Scotland, Fife. We know that part. We had a lovely trip together, and I don't know how Hannah did it, because we didn't have kids at that time, but she left Alister with her in-laws, and he was possibly 2.5, and quite a full-on 2.5. But typically Hannah, she just said, "We're going," and we had a lovely time. Graeme and I shared also similar interests, both being engineers, so we often had very interesting chats. He was working in the 90s already. He was working on recyclable energy or renewable energy, and I was a civil engineer in construction. So Graeme would email me the details of new models that he was working on. I remember the one specific one that they were working on for a Spanish coastline was to recycle wave energy, which was quite a out there concept. And at that time, the world was totally dissing renewable energy. So he had a tough time, and that is what I really so appreciated about Graeme. His intellect, his knowledge, and his perseverance on sticking on things and really knowing this is the right route to go and actually continuing with it, even though it was very tough right up to the end. After Hannah's passing, which obviously was a big shock to us all, I think, we saw Graeme annually. He would come through to Agulhas, and we would always see him. He'd pop in with a friend, Neil, at one point, and last year we just saw him together, and we could really talk deep things. And I think it was the time when one is touched by something as severe as losing your partner. Graeme was able to really, or wanting to talk about things that were dear to him, and he admitted that he missed her dearly. In conclusion, Alister and Stephen, I'd just like to, on behalf of Ingrid and myself, really pass our deepest condolences for the passing of your dad, of Graeme. And I must say, we both, Ingrid mentioned it just now, but we both have often talked about it, how proud your parents would have been and are of both you and Stephen. And I witnessed a bit from a distance. Ingrid was closer to you guys at the time, but I witnessed from a distance how tough it must have been. You know, how you guys saw your dad slowly passing away. You had to make tough decisions, and you had to make it. You could listen to advice, but you had to make it, and you did it. And I know also from a distance, I don't really know Stephen so well, but that the two of you are chalk and cheese in a way, but that you could actually have a bond and you could actually team together and make those calls, which none of us ever hoped to have to make it. So we also, I think as Clive mentioned, thinking of you guys as you go forward, and know that you have family and friends that you can rely on. Okay.
Alister?
That was very nice. Thank you very much. Sorry, I just need to pull myself together. I want to start immediately by recognizing how difficult these past few years have been for our family. Tragedy gets woven into your daily life when you lose your mother in a road accident, or indeed any loved one, however they pass. Then having to take a second call to inform you that your father has now also been injured in a road accident, I think it's not hard to imagine that news would be too much to bear for anyone. However, wherever there was a chance that my dad would make it, as long as we had hope, we stayed strong for him. He always gave us everything. He gave us everything for us, and we were damn sure we would give everything for him. Sadly, of course, we did not get the outcome that we would have liked, but I think I can speak for me and Stephen that we both think he is in a better place now, reunited with my mum, and hopefully going for coffee and cake somewhere nice. This has been a roller coaster of a month. Every day was a different challenge. Every day we had to pick ourselves up from the floor and go again. And a lot of people deserve a lot of credit for the support they have given us. Even though my dad's passing is tragic, there was a lot of light that came through in the darkness. First of all, I need to thank Francois, who was the fellow rider on my dad's trip and our good neighbour. Francois, my dad loved his motorbike rides, we all know that, but to have a fellow soul on the trip, someone to share the joy with, especially after losing my mum, I know how priceless that would have been for him, so thank you for being that friend for him. I also cannot thank you enough for how you acted in the immediate aftermath of the accident, staying with my dad until help came along in the form of the local Saint Chris. Chris, who happened to be driving by in an empty valley with zero phone signal. If it wasn't for the pair of you, any light would have been immediately dimmed on that road. It's important, well, it's crazy to say it, but this situation could have been a whole lot worse. I think that's worth pointing out. I thought I should add in a joke here to try and lighten the mood, but I will just say that while I don't necessarily condone the speeds that Chris was able to achieve on his way to the hospital, I am eternally grateful. Thank you both. The next people I have to thank from the bottom of my heart are back home, and they gave me a lot of technical support as well as friendship when my dad was in hospital, and that is Jesse and Di O'Keefe and Fisantekraal. Me and my brother were navigating a foreign public healthcare system, taking life and death decisions about my dad's recovery on a daily basis, and it was so important to us that he got the best possible care, and it was so important to us that the doctors could see that we wanted to be involved with everything, so we knew exactly what was happening. I'm not going to go into the details, but you can imagine what we faced. Well, we had to face up to it all, and we couldn't have done it without your help. You are all saints. As well as my friends around the world who supported me with kind messages and support, especially Tom Skilbeck, my new neighbour, who, I didn't write this, but before my dad came on his last trip to South Africa, he'd actually just gotten over pneumonia, and I was away in Japan or somewhere, so Tom offered to give my dad a lift to the airport. And my dad got into the car and he was wearing his motorbike jacket, and Tom was just like, "Graeme, man, what are you doing? You just got over pneumonia, what are you doing?" Anyway, that was what my dad loved. My dad loved motorbikes, so. I also, just want to thank Mark Chater as well, and recently orphaned Owen Davies, who I would call in my darkest moments. But also mostly they would just ring in to check in with me on a daily. Without letting off steam, it's very difficult to function in this sort of situation. And I'm going to repeat this a lot, but I need to say it again. I couldn't have done all of this without you. Thank you. I look forward to saying that in person over a pint or two in Newcastle with all my good friends back in the Northeast. And then last but not least, everyone who is here in South Africa with me now. Jana and Peter, for giving us bed and shelter in between our daily hospital visits, taking us for dinner after our dad passed away. It was exactly what we needed. And it's such a beautiful place. The walks on the beach in the morning with Steve were very special for us as we gathered our thoughts for the day ahead. Just gonna have a glass of drink of water, sorry. It was quite an emotional time, as you can imagine. Derek, I know you pulled a lot of strings for me back in Agulhas. Thank you for that. You're an incredibly good friend to my dad, and I know he is gonna miss your daily coffee meetings as much as you will. I could say a lot more. I'm going to stop with, sorry, I've jumped ahead. Ingrid, for your incredible support, our soul carer. You've added a touch of class to our whole operation, incredibly knowledgeable and able to help me and Stephen come to terms with everything. And of course, a great friend to my mum and dad, as is everyone else here. I really want to get on to talking about my dad and what an incredible human he was. I love you all, and I think that was probably the easier bit, funnily enough. Also, just a quick hello to my brother while I'm at it. Hello Steve, hi Chrissy, hi Benji. My father was born in Inverness to Doreen and Charles Mackie in 1952. He was immediately born with a bad chest that would plague him throughout his life. His big sister Dodie was a great source of inspiration to my dad, and in his tribute at her funeral, he said, and I quote, "As a little boy, I worshipped and revered my big sister. If, as a prized treat, I could get her to read me something like Winnie the Pooh, she would have me in an uncontrollable giggling and laughter that invariably ended with my reaching for my asthma inhaler." We sadly lost my Aunt Dodie to cancer mere months before my mum's accident 3 years ago, and it left a huge hole in my dad's life. Then, when my Aunt Dodie was in her teens, she convinced my grandma to get her a pet dog. My father always said on reflection, with my bad chest, that was probably not the best idea. I'm not sure if it was necessarily a direct result of the prized pooch, but my dad ended up spending a lot of his time in a hospital bed in his teens, even going as far as needing a tracheostomy to help him breathe. However, as a result of being held up in his bed, my dad had to entertain himself with doing his maths homework, at which he then excelled, to the extent that he was able to skip his final year of sixth form and go straight to university at the tender age of 17. So maybe it wasn't such a bad dog after all. During his time at Yarrow in Glasgow, my dad graduated with a degree in naval architecture and then went on to complete his master's. For the next 20 years, he worked in the shipbuilding industry between Yarrow and Glasgow and Swan Hunters in Newcastle. During his time at Yarrow and Glasgow, a contract became available in South Africa. My dad said that it was a bit of a poison chalice in the office, that no one wanted to travel to South Africa because of the political climate at the time. He took this quandary of an opportunity back to his father for guidance, and his dad, who had been in the Merchant Navy, interestingly, during World War I and II, said Cape Town was one of the most beautiful places that he'd ever seen in all his world travels. My dad was a very independent kind of guy at heart, and possibly because of his long days in hospital beds and an urge to see the world, he decided to set off on an adventure, and little did he know it would be the start of the biggest adventure of his life, meeting the love of his life, my mum, Henna. My dad wrote an incredible tribute to my mum at her funeral. Actually, for quite a quiet guy, my dad was incredible at public speaking. At many formal family events, like my grandma's 90th, Steve's wedding, and can also say I've seen him at conferences and business meetings while working for him for 10 years at Ocean Flow Energy. He was incredibly intelligent, funny, and just really good. As my cousin Charlie put it, he was so good at public speaking, it was actually kind of annoying. But my dad being annoyingly good at everything he turned his hand to is actually one of the most consistent core themes of his life. My grandma, when she was still alive, she told me, you know, his dad, my grandpa, once said, anything that boy turns his hand to, he will be a success at. And she said, he was right. To go back to him meeting my mum, I know my dad and seeing them as a couple for a lifetime, he saw a kindred soul in my mum, a true love at first sight. They both suffered severely from health problems as teenagers, which had driven them both to be hospitalized for long periods of time. Both emerged slightly naive to the world, but determined not to let time be wasted anymore. And once they met, they did that together through the happiest years of their lives. My mum was an incredibly strong character who took her hardships with a pinch of salt and chose to be really as happy as best she could. Both incredibly intelligent in their respective fields. My mum, languages, my dad, maths and engineering. Both had wicked senses of humor, and while life is never easy and hardships would always arise, as they do for anyone, they both made a lot of sacrifices for each other and forged ahead. My mum used to always check my dad's grammar for him when he wrote papers, as for an intelligent guy, he did actually have a vague dyslexic streak. Someone reminded me that my mum was very funny with my dad whenever he was having some sort of, asthma attack or skin flare-up. She would wave her hand and wryly say, I think he's putting it on. I do think that actually speaks to the essence of how they held each other up. They would purposely downplay each other's hardships with a bit of a wink and a nod, while actually doing anything above and beyond to support one another. My mum was always so worried about my dad's health and vice versa. I wrote quite a long speech. I was almost there. Around 1998, when my dad sold the company that he and David Hewitt started from the embers of Swan Hunters to Babcock International, my mum and dad decided to use the money to purchase a place of their own in South Africa, which they could holiday in and let out. We looked at a series of places near my mum's sister Elsa's house in the Strand, and each one was a fine place to stay, but none of them were wheelchair friendly and none of them were right. We then, as part of this holiday house hunting exercise, went to Augusta to stay with Derek and Lindy, which is the southernmost tip of Africa, and I think we all fell in love with it. It's a beautiful place. It's like very wild, nature reserves, a lighthouse on the hill, right next to the sea. Anyway, the long story short, they decided to get someone to design their own dream house for them. However, my dad, on a business trip to Texas, of all places, bought a design your own house book from the airport bookshop and went ahead and designed it himself. With help, I'm sure, but having worked with him, I'm pretty sure he will have figured it out mostly himself. It was built in around 2000. We've had 20 years of incredibly happy memories there, and we will definitely have many more happy memories there. Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll read this next bit as well. As a side note, as part of that business sale, my mum convinced my dad to book him and my brother onto our first ever safari trip. And we went to the Kalahari Nature Reserve. And at the end of the first day, after having basically had the day of our lives, seeing all of the African Big Five, incredible experience, we pulled up onto this like beautiful plain in the savannah, and there's like deer and buffalo and giraffes and just frolicking in the background or whatever. Perfect setting, sunset. And the guide pulls out your little table and starts serving us cold drinks. And we'd basically barely taken a sip when all of a sudden his little radio started chattering, and we could see there was a massive lightning storm and thunderstorm rolling in at speed from the horizon. Like within minutes, we were being annihilated in a torrential downpour on the back of this open-top safari jeep, in ponchos, thunder, lightning spearing down on the horizon, and us, of course, sitting in a giant metal lightning rod. Surrounded by wild animals, bobbing across rapidly deteriorating roads, wearing cheap plastic ponchos, sat next to my little brother and my father. I don't think I've ever been happier. It was pure Jurassic Park vibes. All of us Mackies have a sweet tooth, my dad included. While he basically seemed to live on a diet of nuts and berries, which I think you can attribute him aging so well, we all love going for a slice of cake and having coffee in our favorite coffee shops. In South Africa, it was the brandy tart and a Gullis Lighthouse Cafe back in the day, or the carrot cake, which is pretty much the perfect recreation of the carrot cake my mum would make at Wings. We also we always go for dessert. Also, like his mother did, my dad loved marmalade. He settled on a particular brand that you could get in our local supermarket, and I would, buy the jars in a tray at a time. He usually would give me the instruction that he was running out way in advance, so when I went to restock the shelf, there would still be at least one full jar and one in use. I was chatting to my dad this holiday while he was working in his garage, and I was going to the shops, and I said, it's a very hot day, Dad. Do you want anything? And he was like, no, I think I'm okay. I was like, really? I was like, do you want me to get you like a Magnum or an ice cream or something? And he said, no, I'm fine. I just wasn't really sure about it. I wasn't sure what was going on. So I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, I'm okay. He said, I had a chocolate muffin earlier. My dad was an incredible figure in his field of work. I'm not going to go too much into that now, but he was a world-class developer of marine energy technologies. I worked for him for 10 years. He was incredibly patient, so intelligent, so persistent. I think everyone he worked with during that time learned a lot from him or benefited from his solutions that he conceived. I'd like to say that everyone we work with at Ocean Flow, we're like an incredible work family. We worked so hard for him at various stages, and I was really proud of everything we did for him and with each other. It was really a great period for me. There was a lot of ups and downs, but it was incredibly formative and very inspiring. And when I get home, I'm going to try and get his work recognized with some sort of royal commendation. There'll be more talk about this work when we have a service for him in the UK, which me and Stephen are penciling in for later this year. Okay, my final thanks to my dad for his greatest gift to me of all, my brother, Stephen. I left the best till last. Stephen, who was such a source of strength and support for me, flying over to be with me and Dad towards the end. I know Dad is looking down on us. We'd be incredibly proud of us working together. I also want to thank your wonderful wife, Chrissy. Chrissy, thank you for single mumming it for a week and a half, and Darren for flying up to chip in, and Charlie, of course, for taking Benji for walks. One of the biggest tragedies of my dad passing, I feel, is that Benji, Stephen and Chrissy's newborn son, who was just born on Boxing Day last year, won't get to spend more time with him. I love that you got to meet your grandpa at least one time, and you can be sure your grandpa had so much love for you. This time we've been away, he's been constantly sharing photos with everyone and, commenting on how brilliant you are. We will make sure you know that when you're old enough. So anyway, I started to write this last night. It got away from me a bit. My dad was a modest man. He was fiercely intelligent, very loyal, proactive, practical, and didn't have a shred of common sense. But to me, he was just my best friend and the person who I will always look up to the most. I'm going to miss you, Dad. I love you. Thank you.
Wow. We heard two incredible tributes. And while I was sitting there thinking about it, the problem with a service like today, and a guy like myself, Martin's is funeral directors. We live in a very Afrikaans part of Cape Town. I'm the one English minister that they use, so I get called on to do many, many services. But sitting there, and while Alister, while you were talking, I was really taken aback. My brother and I went through a very similar process when my dad passed away, and had to make tough decisions. And we were living in two separate countries. Well, we were in the UK, and my dad was here. And as we read earlier, time. It's only moments like this do you realize how finite time is to you and I, how short time is. And I want to encourage all of you as friends and family of Graeme, of Alister, and your brother Steve, to take time in the weeks and months ahead to really be there for him. I stand behind pulpits like this every single week and talk. At my dad's funeral, I was so angry with so many things. Me living overseas in the UK, him here, me not talking to him for a couple of months, simply because I couldn't be bothered. It was too much effort to phone and talk to him for no other reason. And then he had passed away. I couldn't even stand up and say anything at my dad's funeral. When my mom passed away, I did her funeral. I was the minister at her funeral. And just sitting there being reminded of that, it is so important to take time and to remember the family. And to remember, in the time after somebody passes away, you can be angry. I remember after my dad's funeral, walking to the back following his coffin, guilty that I never said a word. And I remember at my mom's funeral being so thankful to be able not just to say a few words, but to do the funeral. And realizing again that in the aftermath of somebody passing away, the grief goes up and down, like you mentioned quite a few times, the roller coaster. And it's so important to give people time and space to feel it all. And Alister, I want to say to you and your brother, it's very cliched, but the greatest healer is time. You'll never forget. You'll always remember. It will always be sore. Even there, a little tear in my eye, remembering my own parents. And my dad passed away 15 years ago. My mom, 3 years ago. But time makes the sore just a little bit easier to bear. We've celebrated the life of a modest, a family guy, a man who seemed to enjoy what he did, loved what he did, a guy that seemed to enjoy his family and life. And we're going to watch a slideshow. And the purpose of this slideshow is going to be twofold. It's for all of us, here and overseas, just to see some photos, listen to one of Graeme's favorite songs, to remember the moments you had with him and the great times you had. And when the slideshow finishes, we're going to take 30 seconds of silence. And in those 30 seconds of silence after the slideshow, this will be your opportunity, just individually, in your heart before together we commit Graeme to the process, just quietly in your heart, to say goodbye to him. So as the slideshow is played, enjoy it, laugh at the photos, remember the amazing coffee you can get in this part of the world, deluxe, enjoy it, enjoy the song, and afterwards, in those 30 seconds, close your eyes, take a moment, quietly, individually say goodbye, and then together we're going to say goodbye to him. as we have individually come and said goodbye to Graeme, we're now going to commit Graeme to the process moving forward and to his final place of rest. And this is our opportunity as friends and family together, corporately, to come and say goodbye to him. So as we commit Graeme, will you stand with me? So this morning, here in this last act, in sorrow but without fear, in love and appreciation, we commit Graeme Charles Mackie to the flames. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The grass withers and the flowers fail, but memories last forever. And although there is grief today as we say goodbye, Graeme, there's gratitude for everybody here today for your life. They are truly grateful for the privilege of having shared life with you. But rest now at the end of your days. Rest in the hearts and minds of all those who love you. And so, with love, we shall leave you in peace. In a moment, we're going to close our service by praying that very famous prayer known as the Lord's Prayer. Once we've prayed it, I'm going to walk forward. Graeme is going to follow me down the middle aisle to the car. Once he goes past you, file in behind, and outside we're going to throw and scatter a few petals on Graeme's coffin before Graeme goes to his final resting place. So will you close your eyes as we pray together? If you know the prayer, feel free to join me and pray it as you go along. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.